I want to be able to dictate the tempo and the pace of the game through the defensive side, not more so than the other way around. I don't want the offense to dictate the tempo of the game. So being able to line up in multiple defenses, but still do it in a manner of adding pressure and so forth. Everybody says that's what they want to do. I would think if you sat there and said, ask any coach, hey, what do you want? Well, I want to send multiple defenses. I want to line up multiple pressures, and I want to bend, I want to break, and all that stuff. And that sounds fantastic, and it is the right answer. But how to do it is really the magic potion to this whole situation.
Hi, I'm Bradley Tarpy, and welcome to the Six Man Spotlight, a place where we give a platform to six-man football coaches to share the intricacies of scheme and culture unique to the world of six-man football. Today's guest is Gordon head coach Mike Reed. An alumni of Gordon, Coach Reed has led the Longhorns since the 2018 season. Coach Reed has solidified himself as one of the top coaches in the UIL, as he has led his team to 8 state championship games and 5 state championships, including back-to-back at Throckmorton in 2011 and 2012, as well as coming off of a 3-peat championship run at Gordon from 23, 24, and 25. The Gordon 2025 team has drawn the attention of six-man enthusiasts as being in the discussion of being the best team of all time, a point that Coach Reed argues in favor of. In case these accolades were not enough, Coach Reed was also recognized as the NFHS National Boys Coach of the Year for the 24-25 season in track and field. In case I have not made it clear, Coach Reed has an incredible resume. In today's conversation with Mike Reed, we talk defensive philosophy, a primer on the Gordon 23 defense, and we talk difficult to defend offenses in our depth chart session. I want to start by bragging on Coach Reed for a second. I sent out a bunch of communications to coaches that I wanted to have on the spotlight, and Coach Reed got back to me within 5 or 6 hours and just said, sure, just tell me what you need me to do, man. So you sort of have this reputation of being a guy that's willing to share, and you've fit that description to a T, and I'm just really excited to have you here and thankful for your time.
I appreciate it. The thing is, I'm a thief of all, and I think in this coaching profession, I mean, I think there's things over the generation of times that I've been able to do is, created things and have come up with things. But for the most part, everything's been stolen, and then, has always been built off that. And it's only fair to, be on a platform where you're able to share that information back to people and give back to a community that's been so good to me, for sure.
Yes, sir. Well, hey, like I was telling you, I stumbled upon some videos you put together on sixmanfootball.com. I'm not sure what year they were posted. I think you said you recorded them in 2012. But I was just really impressed with the level of detail. And once again, like we were saying, there's a gap in information out there for six-man football, but I think that's especially true for defense. So I wanted to bring you on today to talk about as much defense as we can. And as we start that, I just wanted to sort of hear about your philosophy. Like, what are your thoughts on defense and six-man football? I mean, what's your background there? Just curious to hear everything you can share about sort of where you came from, where you're at now defensively.
Yeah, I've been doing, I've been doing six-man football. I've been around it, as a coach for 26 years. And, the thing is, I think every time if you would ask me that question, at year 5, my answer would have been different than it was at year 10. And my answer would have been different than it was at year 15, answer different than 20. And now, at year 26, the philosophy part, has changed somewhat. I guess early in my career, I just thought, man, just pressure, 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 just, just line up in a 4-2 and just send pressure and just, and now it's really, really changed because of the complexity and sometimes of the offenses. The defenses have to be equally as complex. And so, now my philosophy is, I want to be able to dictate the tempo and the pace of the game through the defensive side, not more so than the other way around. I don't want the offense to dictate the tempo of the game. So being able to line up in multiple defenses, but still do it in a manner of adding pressure and so forth. Everybody says that's what they want to do. I would think if you sat there and said, ask any coach, hey, what do you want? Well, I want to send multiple defenses. I want to line up multiple pressures, and I want to bend, I want to break, and all that stuff. And that sounds fantastic, and it is the right answer. But how to do it is really the magic potion to this whole situation, because in the end, you only have six guys, and you have to defend six eligible receivers at all times, and then how to build your defense to be able to do that, and then be able to do it at such a high level that, all right, what's your season goals? Is your season goals to go 5-5, 10-0, 15-0, and then you have to kind of build your defense around, the personnel that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and the strengths of them, because they change every year. So to sit there and say, well, we only want to run this style of defense, or only do this. Well, if you don't have that style, people say, well, I don't have that style of personnel, I can't do that. That's the trick within itself as well. There is matching your personnel to the type of defenses that you want to be able to run. And so, yeah, philosophy wise, yeah, I'm what everybody's going to answer. I want to be multiple in defense, add pressures. I want to be sound. I want to make sure I line up. And so we talk about that all the time, stance, alignment, and, your, your job, you got to be able to do those.
I saw a stat that at the end of this past regular season, you guys were giving up 7.5 points a game, which is obviously phenomenal. It's almost unbelievable. It's crazy. Um, but I think that's obviously a statement to how talented you guys are, that you guys have tremendous players and you're putting them in a position to be really successful. But I'm curious with the talent that you guys have, how does that affect your philosophy for your defense that season? Like, for example, do you say, okay, we're really good, we're going to be more vanilla and kind of let our guys, make plays in our system? Or do you feel like that talent maybe gives you the flexibility to be more multiple?
I wouldn't say talent gives you the way to be more multiple. I think football IQ, I think that kind of stuff. But more on top of that, I remember even when we played the 11 man game, some of the guys were asking, you know, asked by other people like, hey, how'd you know what to do on defense? How'd you kind of know that? And I love the kids' responses. Some people probably wouldn't love it, but they just said, I just did what coach told me to do. I didn't necessarily know why I was doing what I did, but I just did what coach said to do, which is really the same premise in our six-man defense. Kids with good high football IQ allow us to have the statement kind of defense we have the last 3 years. I mean, really, that stat's not just a 1-year-old stat. That
Hmm.
stat right there has been defensively. We've held, for the last 3 years, over 44 games, we've held our opponents under less than 10 points in a sport that is designed to be explosive and high offense, up into the 60s and 70s. And, so for 3 seasons, we've been able to hold people under that. And the reason is exactly what I said. The kids just do what they're told. Now, a guy by the name of Mitch Lee, so for your older audiences, okay, they will know who he is. He is what's called a key reading defense. And so everything he does is it's based off key reads. Now, when I went to the 11-man world, I took that one step further, because the 11-man guys are so, not that six-man aren't, but the 11-man for, I mean, most everybody is so gap oriented. Everybody has a gap responsibilities. Well,
Hmm.
that's okay. So how does that work now into six-man? So we've taken key reading and gap assignments, and then have built our defenses off of that. And then being able to get the personnel at it, you got to understand this isn't also just a 3-year stat. We've got to
Yeah.
look at what we've done for the 5 years prior to this, and then in the runs of Throckmorton, and then the runs of Rule, how that has held true. Yeah, so what happened when I was in my early years at Rule, I just, man, everybody lining up, they kind of knew what their key read was, and they went there. But we really, really did not do a great job of understanding gap assignments and things like that. When I went to Throckmorton, same premise. Everybody sits there and says, "Hey, we're going to watch who the better teams in the state playoffs are. Let's mimic that defense. Let's run what those guys run." They don't really understand why they're doing what they're doing. They just know,
Hmm.
hey, they're playing late in the year. That defense must be the good defense. And really, that's not the case, especially if you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. Um, but the next piece of that, when I went to Hamilton and coached 4 seasons of 11 man, and we were terrible. I mean, and so really, when you're terrible, you become a really good football coach in a hurry.
Yes, yes, you do.
If you desire to be successful. And so obviously we started becoming more successful. And I learned a lot more coming back to Gordon, taking that, okay, I understand the importance of alignment. I understand the importance of our stances. I understand the importance of, hey, do what coach tells you to do. And your good football players, they understand why they're doing what they're doing, but you can't control that. I mean, that you either got them or you don't. And
Right.
so, and then now, what's our gap assignments and how does that fit? Who's fitting under? Who's fitting over? And then once you can start dictating that, now you got a pretty good defense.
Love it. Love it. Well, hey, Coach, like I was telling you, I really wanted to bring you on today to talk specifically about your 2-3-1 defense, which I understand you guys call 23. And this might be ignorant of me, but as I kind of stumble across UIL games, it seems like it's a pretty common defense in the UIL world. So I was just curious, would you mind taking us through a quick kind of position by position, install of this 23 defense? And maybe let's just start with something simple like a T formation, like a split back formation.
So I think the first thing that's important is to kind of identify what you're going to call each position. I think that's for me where when I was younger, we just said, hey, you're a DN. Hey, you're a middle linebacker. Hey, you're a linebacker. Hey, you're a safety. And from there, we really kind of had to change because we were starting to get into a little bit more multiple defenses the more we got. And identifying and knowing the ownership of your position was really important. So weak side linebacker, strong side linebacker, weak side DN, strong side DN, nose guard could be in 6 man. It's either nose guard or a middle linebacker. And so we were really kind of able to try to figure out who's the safety, who's the weak side safety, and really just start giving guys names. So for us, you know, we only really have one defensive end, even though there's two DNs. We only have one defensive end because the other one's going to be a nose guard. The other one's going to be our middle linebacker, and so our nose guard plays on the weak side. So he's really your weak side
Okay.
D end.
Okay.
And then our middle linebackers in the middle, and then our strong D end is on the strong side, and then we have a strong linebacker, free safety, and then weak side linebacker. And so we felt like as we worked through giving different looks out of the 2-3, but staying within the same family, identifying the names of where those people were at was important when we started building in our depth chart as well, because the body types would sometimes change in who your backups are. And so you may
Right.
have a nose guard who in most people's brain think, oh man, we got a big nose guard. Well, what do
Hmm.
you do when your nose guard's a little, backup? He's a good football player, but he's a good nose guard, but he's just a different body type.
Yep.
And the thing in defense is that you need to understand is, you know, what do you want out of the 2-3? You know, when you're at Chili's and somebody says, hey, I drew this play, most people, every time they draw this play on that napkin, they draw up it against a 2-3. And the reason why they do that against a 2-3 is because really the 2-3 doesn't stop anything. It's a bend, don't break. I mean, it's just, it's a soft defense for the most part. It marries up to everything. It matches up to everything. And so when people draw plays, that's a lot of times what they draw is a 2-3. Well, in your brain, you're like, well, why am I running a defense that when everybody sits there at the bar at Chili's, it's drawing up against what I'm about to run. And so I'm not going to run that. I'm going to run something else. But that's kind of the premise of where we start, making sure that we can personalize, name the positions, and then kind of build off that.
Okay. So when I'm picturing your strong and weak side linebacker, I mean, what's their kind of once again I'm picturing like a a T formation. Like what's their alignment? Where are their eyes? Does it depend on the call, I imagine, for some of it? But
Yeah, so
just did you
we'll stay out of the calls per se, because then, because obviously that can get, but if you're talking like, hey,
mm,
seventh grade defense, and that's
hmm
where we start at. So even though we were the 2-time defending state champions, bringing back the third time, we started 2-a-days in seventh grade defense. That's where we started. I mean, let's get back to the absolute basics. There's a lot of time between football season because they're multi-sport kids. They got girlfriends through the summer, whatever. When they come rocking and rolling on the first day of football, we pretend like they're in the seventh grade. We think that's a great place to start. So in the T formation, yeah, we're gonna just, the nose guards. If you're on offense looking at the defense, so if you're the
hmm
quarterback looking, to your left, you've got the nose guard, and he's head up on that end. Your middle linebacker is on the ball on top of the center, or he can back up a little bit. We don't overthink that right now, and a lot of it depends on the athleticism of the kid. And then your strong side D end, he's head up on that end. And then the linebackers are playing 3 by 3, 3 yards outside, 3 yards back. Inside foot is forward, backside foot's back. On the front line, the shoulders pads are square. We're standing in front, looking at the lineman in front of us. And then the safety is about 7 to 8 yards deep. And that would be your premise, just seventh grade alignment of what we're gonna work on. And so from there, you got what's key reading, okay?
right.
What's going to take us to the football the fastest? And that changes. And that was something
Yes.
that the old school guys taught me. Mitch Lee, he's a key reading guy. He will watch film and he'll figure out, if that left lineman, if his kneecap moves first and it moves left, then that's where I'm slanting and moving to. If the running back if the screw of his hat, turns that way, or his logo turns a certain way, whatever, when you hit that thing in slow motion, you get the most consistent movement from, and the most consistent getting you a direction, left or right. Those are what the key reads are going to be in. It may be all 6 heads, on defense. It may be only 3 heads. But for the most part, that's where you're going to start at.
Okay. So their key is very game plan dependent. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and so if you're in practice, then say, okay, well, what's my seventh grade rule? Well, the problem with seventh graders is seventh graders don't do a great job of stepping properly, getting turned properly, and all that. They just more run right at you.
hmm
So, you can't key a lineman because half the time they're blocking the wrong direction anyways.
hmm
And so a lineman wouldn't be a great key read. Now, we don't love the defense to be keying backfields because backfields lie more than they do. But at the seventh grade level, they really don't lie. I mean, for the most part, playbook's pretty simple. Don't overthink it. And so each outside linebacker is going to key the opposite back,
Okay.
and then that's going to kind of help you with counters, cutbacks, making sure they run back cutbacks and things like that. And then you normally tell a safety if they have whoever their best lineman is, hey, that they probably might throw to, that'll be your first key read. And he's supposed to be late to the party.
Yes, sir. We're very similar in a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, which is making me feel good. Um, so coach, expanding on this, so that's, versus a balanced formation, how does their alignment change versus unbalanced looks like Jaybird, for example?
Okay. So a lot of it just staying in the seventh grade playbook, we're not gonna, we're not gonna change anything. We're just gonna stay straight where we're at and leave the end
Okay.
uncovered.
Okay.
Safety's going to cheat over to take away the middle guard, and that's just going to stay in our base. I mean, that's our base seventh grade defense of where we're going to stay at. Now, from there, you got to sit there and say, okay, what is the strengths of that team? Does the team know how to down block? Do they know how to, take angles? But for the most part, and unbalanced because of that alignment, you've really taken away, the quick dive. You've really taken
Uh-huh.
away some of the weak side stuff. And so you've really kind of just narrowed them down right now to, hey, let's just run to the strong side because, we have them outnumbered. And for me, if I've dictated the play direction that you think that you only can go that direction, Well, then now I can start playing at an advantage that way. So I know by using my alignment, I know what plays you're going to call. And once you start doing that, once you start sitting there saying, okay, we know by alignments, these are the plays that we're going to get out of this guy's playbook. And by the time the course of a season starts going on and in your practices, you're seeing the same plays run against you over and over. You're going to start playing faster. You're going to start playing through blocks faster. You're going to put yourself at an advantage just because of familiarity. And then kids know this is where we're susceptible to.
So, Coach, moving on to something, maybe a little bit more game plan specific here. I've seen that you guys have this rabbit adjustment that you guys will make to Jaybird teams, kind of evolving from your base alignment, which makes a lot of sense. It seems really teachable regardless of the age.Uld you walk us through this thing that you call rabbit, something y'all do against unbalanced formations?
I'm going to have to go back in my memory because I really don't remember what that one was. So I mean, that's 2012 and this 2026. I think the main thing that when we look at our defenses and so what we want to be able to do. So say we still want to take the 2-3. So say we want to take the guy that we just said is head up on the fullback in the unbalanced, right? So you got your nose guard
Okay.
who's playing head up there. You have your middle linebacker that's head up on the center. You have your strong DN that's head up there, head up on the middle guard, right? Okay. So now you want to start movement pieces. And you have to know why you're doing what you're doing. So and what you want to take away. Okay. And so, for example, knowing the weaknesses of the 2-3. So, for example, if we stayed in our 7th grade defense and somebody ran a strong side sweep or weak side sweep, okay, and we win the front. Let's say we're so well coached, we win the whole front. What do we give up? Cutback, right? I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
you win the whole front and you do everything right, well, you give back cutback, and it's a nice
Mm-hmm.
natural cutback. And we said that the linebacker that's on the strong side, well, he has to keep opposite back away from him. So he's squatting and squeezing. He's making sure nothing bends and cuts back. Well, that end, okay, the end that's uncovered is going to wash him up inside, and it's a nice natural cutback. So in the end, when I said earlier, like, well, we've taken away quick dive, we've taken away weak side sweep, and we're going to win the front and slide it. Well, now everything bends back to the strong side again. So now you have to start understanding, all right, winning is sometimes losing. So when you start getting into other defenses and you start getting into it, you got to know what you're going to lose and what you're going to gain. All right. So, for example, it looked like, man, they ain't running weak side sweep on us. We've got it all stopped, right? And unbalanced, right? Well, they just
Uh-huh.
housed it. They just took it for 60 yards because even though the linebacker on the backside was squat squeezing, making sure no cut back there, that tight end sitting right there, that end man that was uncovered, just washes everything down. It cuts back. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can play through the strong side sweeps. We know strong side sweeps coming, and we can play through that. So when you start creating other defenses, like you said in the rabbit, we want to know what we want to do. So somebody's sitting there probably listening to this going, well, I don't even know where this guy's going. You have to look at like the offensive lineman and the end. So you have the middle guard and the end man. Some people call him the tight end. We call him a split
Mm-hmm.
end.
Okay.
Names really don't matter, but just you have the center, the guard, and the end. Okay. If that end's not a great blocker and he's not very good, well, you put a guy in that B gap and blow through there. Okay. Because now you're taking out the fullback, you're taking out the quarterback, you're taking out anything to that strong side, and you're making that guy really have to down block. And then when you stack a linebacker behind that, it's no different than 11 men. I'm reading that end man in the line of scrimmage. So I'm now reading that lineman. So I get a down block, I'm up and filling it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a great defense to do if somebody's got a good end and you're in a B gap and hey, he's going to get down, and that now outside linebacker that's sitting out there, he's got to take on a fullback and a quarterback. Okay. So you have to know kind of why you're doing it. But we'll take our nose guard on the weak side, who's head up on that fullback, and we'll slide him outside, and then we'll invert the other linebacker and now bring him inside. Okay. Well, now we got to know why we do that. Well, now, we have dictated in in a 2-3 where we won the front earlier and everything bended and cut back to the strong side. Well, now when we set that nose guard that, outside, well, everything's going to bend back up inside, right? Well, depending on where you put your internal defense, where are you creating the run lanes through? Where are you creating that running back? When that running back catches it, he's going to run to daylight. We just have to make sure that when those guys catch the ball and run to daylight, we know who's responsible for filling that daylight hole. And once you start moving pieces, so whether you call it rabbit, turtle, whatever, elephant, it don't matter. When you start moving the 2-3 pieces up in the front, you got to realize you might be winning a matchup, but you're really losing it. So, for example, let's look at the 2-3 again. So most people will cover up the fullback with the D end. They'll leave the center uncovered, and they'll move the middle linebacker over to the middle guard, right? And then they'll put the D end over the far end, right? So most people, when they run the 2-3, their 7th grade defense is, let's leave the center uncovered. Okay, let's slide everything. Now, when you do that, you got to know what you gave up. You got to know, because the unbalance is a 5-gap system. T formation is a 4-gap system, right? 2 A gaps, 2 outside. Okay. So that's what most people kind of normally do. But let's say, for example, this is back to winning again is losing. When you have that defensive end or nose guard that's over that fullback and they want to run weak side sweep to you, right? Okay. And however they want to block the center and middle guard, irrelevant how they want to block it. Some people block the center back and they'll fold the middle guard up to the safety. Some people will go ahead and just win the middle guard and then send the center up after the safety, right? Because we know that in most offensive rules, so we got to think from defensive coordinator standpoint, most offensive linemen go gap, head up, linebacker. So if plays going left, lineman puts his hand down. Is anybody in my gap? Is anybody head up? Is anybody second level? I mean, for the most part, that's everybody's general rules. More complex offenses obviously will have variances to that, but for the most part, 7th grade, 8th grade purposes, that's the rules. So if it's a weak side sweep, right, and that fullback is now, you have to teach him one of two things, depending on the type of kid he is. He either has to be an 8, he has to play inside where the center left, or he has to play outside where the center, or where outside to the weak side. So when he gets a weak side read, does he step outside to stop the outside, or does he play through his face, or does he step down inside? He has to create a running lane, because if he doesn't, what's going to happen is if he just tries to play through that guy, well, the center is vacating out, the guard is winning the middle guard, and there's an A-gap hole, and then there's an outside hole where the quarterback is going to pitch and get the outside linebacker. And so everything naturally bends back up through the middle because you vacated the middle. You bumped everything over. So now everything, even though you're winning the weak side sweep, even though that fullback D end, are marrying up together and you're stretching things out, the running back's going to put his foot in the ground. He's going to run back up right where the center was at. And so you got to know your middle linebacker who's sitting there on that middle guard. Well, he's obviously responsible for reading it and playing across there. Well, they can pick him off because he has angles. The center can come back and block him. Well, now he's beat. Guard can wrap and get to the safety. And so everything's a nice natural marry for them. So you have to know when you create your 2-3 defense, what you're gaining and what you're giving up. And so for us, when I was saying earlier, we want to be gap sound. So even though we don't want to, if we win something, we're winning it intentionally to create the run lanes for that running back. So when that running back sees that daylight, well, to him, it's his only option, but we dictated where that run lane's through, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, no.
And that's where the complexities get into, is how to dictate where the run lanes are in the middle to where they are to the weak side and where they are to the strong side, and not stay in the same defense every time. Because if we uncover the center, for example, we know that the guy is going to say, man, I'm gonna run something that's gonna bend back through that A gap because everything's out perimeter wise. So they're gonna come right at you. So we know that. So the next defensive time, we may be in the rabbit defense, which is now, okay, we're now gonna take away because he's thinking play calling. He's gonna call something that's gonna do that. So we try to stay one play ahead. If we called something that takes away the strong side sweep on a play, well, we know
Hmm.
that guy calling plays is going, man, they've taken away the strong side. I ain't going to call that. I'm going to call this. So we try to stay one play ahead and say, hey, this is what we took away. We took away the weak side. Hey, he ain't going to call a weak side play. He's going to call a strong side play. And so we just try to stay one play ahead by dictating where we want those run fills to be.
Good stuff. That's terrific. Okay. So, Coach, zooming out a little bit, maybe even going back to like the seventh grade version of the defense, when you're putting together your personnel, I mean, where are you trying to get certain body types? Like, where are you trying to put maybe your best tackler? Where are you trying to put your best cover guy? How do you go about assigning positions to your different athletes?
Well, it's changed, and just because our kids have changed, the kid that we actually had the last 2 years previous to this one, he was a 5'7" Hispanic kid, 220 pounds.
Yeah.
And then we replaced him with a 6'1", 195-pound kid that runs a 51 quarter, and played that same exact position. Um, I'm telling you, I really think people overthink that.
Hmm.
Put your good football players where they feel. Don't overthink it. Um, but when you can start latching into, a kid, if he can't play off a block, I can't put him there. A kid that,
Mhm.
can naturally see something and trigger and play down. Well, you know, put him in that position, put him in a linebacker or safety position. Um, I, I think that question for me gets asked so much. And to be honest with you, I mean, even as we go into our next year, um, we've got a kid that's just like the kid that's kind of graduating for us, but he just doesn't get off blocks very good. He's a good athlete, just doesn't get off blocks. And we can't put him at middle linebacker. He has all the ability, has it, but it's just something he just ain't great at. He's a little bit undersized. And so to put him where this other kid was, it was a good one. That kid could play off blocks. That kid had a lot of dirt under his nails, and he wasn't a milk drinker, and he liked to get in there. And so um I I think people just know. I think as a coach,
Yeah.
you'll know where to put them. I mean,
Hmm.
if a kid can't keep contained, well, I mean, who cares what his body type is? The defensive MVP 3 years ago for us in the state championship game was a 5'7", 145-pound kid who played weak side linebacker, you know, and then then the next year the defensive MVP was a strong side linebacker, and this year the defensive MVP was the middle linebacker, so really just doesn't matter. Just, find the kids and what their strengths are. You see them every day. They move around every day. I think body types and all that, and that's an overrated question. I think that's just people searching for the answer to maybe why something doesn't work, because I think people look at us and go, oh my, they got so much talent, I mean, my gosh, no wonder why they're good, you know and that's, to me, that's a cop out, because I can take that stat and I can go back to years we were 5-5, or 7-3, and doing the exact same thing, just beating people we shouldn't have beat when we were 7-3. But because we weren't winning at a grand stage, people didn't think that what we were doing was any good. And then they just oh, they got talent, so that's why they're able to win. Well, no, duh. I mean, come on now. The NFL right now is they're playing in the AFC championships here because they got talent. I mean, that's so body types, personnel, all that stuff. You know what kids can do. And then you'll start piecing together the defenses and what you're able to do out of the defense based off their talent, right? I mean, you may have a good
Hmm.
football player, but I ain't going to call if he can't blitz because he's slow, but that's what we got, and he's in that. Well, you just don't call blitzes because he's slow. So yes, the better our talent was this year and over the last 3 years, yeah, we're able to blitz and be really aggressive out of all 6 positions.
Mhm.
But in the years we weren't so great, I mean, we could only blitz out of 2 positions because we were only really talented in 2 positions. So I think the growth of the defense comes off the talent, but where you're putting them, and you put them where you want them, and then from there coach them up, contain, playoff blocks, fill gaps, cover the pass. I mean, that's stuff that is you have to do anyways.
That's good stuff. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I hear you. Um, well, Coach, let's transition now to your practices. Like you come watch a Gordon defensive practice. I mean, what does that look like? Like, what do you guys emphasize? Can you just kind of take us through what that block of time looks like during the practice day?
Yeah. So we start off every day. Probably we do 7-minute periods. Is kind of what we do. I used to do 5-minute periods, but sometimes by the time a kid walks over there, or by the time you explain what you're going to do in that five
Yeah.
minutes, 5 minutes becomes 3 minutes. And so I really normally want a good 5 minutes. When I say I want something, so I put everything we do is on 7-minute buzzers. I run a clock, and we either get it done that 7 minutes or 14 minutes or whatever we do. We always go 14 minutes of offense, 14 minutes of defense, 14 minutes of offense, 14 minutes of defense.
Mm.
Because I think that's how a football game is. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was in school, we'd work an hour on offense, we'd work an hour of defense, and then we'd go on. Or we'd work, and we just did that every day. And when I got to Hamilton and we weren't great, it was just kind of the monotony of, oh, inside hole, outside hole, and I just want to change up the monotony. And so what we need to get accomplished is different, from on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Um, and what we got to get built in. We have about 15 things that we want to get good at defensively each week, from pass hole to spread rushing to open field tackling to, good on good drills, getting off blocks. And we have just a company of drills that we really like to do. There's about 15 different things that we want to get accomplished through a 3 to 4 day period, Monday through Thursday or Monday through Wednesday, depending on what the week looks like, and that we want to get accomplished. And we don't try to do them all 15 in that. But one of the things I learned a long time ago is if I spent 5 minutes, and this is why people don't sometimes do this. If I want to spend 5 minutes on something a day, all right, um, you think, man, 5 minutes isn't very much. Man, on Monday I did this for 5 minutes. But 5 minutes becomes Tuesday, becomes 10 minutes, becomes 15 minutes. And you think, okay, well, 15 minutes doesn't become a big deal. But then you do that over 10 weeks, and you've done it over for 2 hours. You've worked on something for over 2 hours of
Mhm.
that. And then it starts becoming that unconscious consciousness. And so for us, the first part of a football practice is this part is redundant. And I you know, Will Ferrell said it best in his movie, the vomit play. You do it so much, you just do it, vomit, and uh, the same thing with us is just doing it so much, it's unconscious consciousness. We put up 3 barrels. We stole 3 construction barrels, the orange ones, and we set them up in a T formation. Now, most people know what an angle pursuit drill is. So they used to do where you had to run all the way to the sideline, you had to run all the way to the sideline and do all that. Well, we know where the defensive end has to set, or where we have to set
Right.
the edge. And I don't care whether it's Pop Warner football, NFL football, college football, 6-man football, it powder puff football, it doesn't matter. If you can't set an edge, you're going to get beat. So when you start building your 2-3 defense and you start going from there, somebody is responsible for setting an edge where that
Mhm.
running back is not getting outside. It's stuff's coming back to the middle. Okay. So what we do is we stick orange cones about 3 yards behind the barrels of where we want the edge to be set. So, that linebacker's at 3 and 3. So we're going to go into the backfield, and when that play comes his way, we want him being into the offensive backfield and setting an edge. So we put a cone right at those spots. And then we fan those cones out a little bit, kind of like a banana, out
Mm-hmm.
towards the defensive secondary. So we start bending those orange cones outside that direction. Okay. Then we start calling our defenses. So we got 3 people on scout team. So we got a quarterback and 2 running
Yep.
backs. All right.
Okay.
And they just run sweep right, sweep left, bootleg right, and bootleg right. That's their only plays that quarterback can run sweep left, sweep right, and that running back that's not getting the ball sprints up to the cone and then stops, and the running back who has the ball runs on the orange cones. Nobody can touch him, and he's got to run as far as he can. Quarterback, if he doesn't want to pitch it, he can fake it, and then he just bootlegs out. So somebody's responsible for bootleg. So we just start with real base, simple stuff. First day practice, those are the plays. All right. Now we start calling all our different defenses out of the 2-3. Okay. Behind the barrels is 3 foot behind that. So where the cones were set for the edge, we use the
Mm-hmm.
lines of the football field. That's called the cliff. Okay. And you cannot fall off the cliff. So any defensive lineman that penetrates up the field, so as defenses start changing, we start blitzing, we start stunning, we start moving. Now we start moving our pieces of our defense to create the run fits. That whoever plays on the other side of the football in the offensive backfield has to redirect and not fall off the cliff. Because you see a lot of times those suckers will shoot through there and they start bending and trying to chase somebody. We want to get through there and redirect to meet where the edge was set. And now we want to be on that first cone just as fast and before that running back gets to that first cone as well. Okay. And then from there, we just start calling all our blitzes, our slants, or who's going to get in the gap, middle linebacker's going to, and that's where we start. Once we get out of that, now we start building into our practices. Do we want to open field tackle that day? Do we want to work on engaging from blocks and disengaging from blocks? Do we want to work spread rush? Do we want to defend tailback option? So from there, we just have like I said, about 15 things that we want to get accomplished. We'll pick 3 or 4 on Monday, and then we just start building that into our team part of our practice. But we'll only do it for 14 minutes. Then we'll go do something offensively for 14 minutes. And then we come back, do something defensively for 14 minutes, and then we just go back and forth.
I'm enjoying hearing about sort of these sessions that aren't quite team, they aren't quite indie, they're like what we call group. Would you mind, I heard you mention pass hole, would you mind explaining that as well?
Yeah, so what we kind of do is we know that there's 2 different variances in which you have to be able to defend. You have to be able to defend the balanced offense. You have to defend the unbalanced offense. You have to defend tight spread. Now, there's traditional spread, there's tight spread, and then there's unbalanced, and then there's balanced. And that's why defenses are so difficult. You have to be able to defend all those things. So what we do in our pass hole is we have cards that we know that these are the cards that are just for that. Whether it's what the team is going to run or not run, we will sit there and say we want to defend T formation pass hole for 7 minutes. And we just have our stack of cards that were all the different types of T plays that we just have anything from bootleg sweeps to sweep passes to whatever. Now, if the team that we're playing that week runs a lot of T, then we'll run their T plays. Like these are the pass plays that they run out of T. But if they don't, if they're not a T team, that's okay. We still work it for about 7 minutes because we know at some point we're going to play a T team. And so we just want to make sure that we're there. And so we've done it 1 of 2 ways. We'll just put in whoever's responsible for passes. So when the defenses are called, whoever's responsible for the passes, we put them in. Now, if we're going to stay balanced in the 2-3, well, pretty much all you want is the middle linebacker, the outside linebacker, and the safety. And the defensive ends, we tell them they go to scout team. They're going to run plays.
Yeah.
But we'll also leave the defensive ends there as well too. They just can't touch the quarterback. So they'll show their angle where they're at, and then they'll just show up to the quarterback, but they cannot impede his progress and his run. So we've done it one of two ways: with defensive linemen, without defensive linemen. It probably works best with the defensive linemen, just because it sometimes kind of to show the linebackers a little bit the fits or the pressures from it and things like that. But you don't have to do that. Then we do the same thing for unbalanced. So we'll sit there and we know, hey, we're going to play. Like for us, we know there's certain people we have to beat later on in the playoffs and things like that. So we know, hey, we got to defend these unbalanced plays, and those are the unbalanced plays that we run, and we mix them up. Now we'll mix them in with the T with that, and do that sometimes, and then we'll progress that into our tight spread as well. So we'll work. Just balanced tight spread, unbalanced tight spread, and then we just draw a bunch of, index cards on that and and that would be our pass hole. But we do the same
That's
thing
cool. I
for open
like that.
field
I like
tackling.
that y'all. Go ahead.
No, we'll do the same thing for open field tackling. So what we'll do is we'll also work it in two parts. So we'll do a pass hole too, where we're really working down the field passes, making sure people are trading off into their, trading off if that's what you want to do. And sometimes people don't know whether, to zone it and trade off. We run a lot of man and zone out of the 2-3. But, for the main premise too, we'll do the exact same thing. And we know without a doubt the best play in six-man football is what? The busted play. I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, we
Yeah.
spend all these times drawing plays, and really in the end, the busted play is the one that scores the most. And so we also know that in the pass play, and, there's going to be protectors that are in that. So the people on the line of scrimmage that are going to be blocking and protecting so the downfield stuff comes. Well, who's responsible for them? So what we'll do is then we'll do the exact same thing with the same cards, but then we work our open field tackling. So now people run their routes, defensive ends show up, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, play breaks up, then we dump you can only dump to the people that were blocking, and now who's responsible for rallying and tackling them. And so we're kind of able to work two parts in that. We're able to work the downfield part, but then we're also going to work the open field tackling part. Now we have open field tackling drills that we do that we love, and we may just do them. But like I said, we have things throughout the week that you want to address and work on. But it just seems like you can't get that in team because the scout team generally is so terrible, you can't get a great look. So whenever
Yeah.
the quarterback turns around and is going to pass it, he's sacked before he can get out of there. So you have to give that look. You really have to be able to simulate what good pass routes are going to look like without impeding that. And you're going to have to work on open field tackling as well, which is normally going to come if you can do a great job covering in the back end. Well, he's going to do what? He's going to scramble and dump. So we work that as well into that piece. We may run the exact same play, may run it twice just to speed up the time. Hey, we're going to run these plays twice. We're going to work downfield pass. Now we're going to work the open field tackling. So same thing. Now quarterback's not there. Defensive ends show it, and then we go on two whistles. So once ball comes out, he dumps it. Once he dumps it, spread rusher's got to turn around. They got to chase. As soon as contact gets made, we'll blow the first whistle. We'll count to 4. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4, and all six hands have to be on that ball carrier. Just to kind of show the energy and the pace in which it needs to be at.
Well, Coach, we're going to move to a segment of the show that I like to call the depth chart. And today's edition, I'm calling hard to defend. So I'm going to give you 3 options, and you need to rank them based off of, in your opinion, their difficulty to stop them or defend them. Okay. So here we go. The first one is the weak sweep out of the Jaybird formation. The second one is TBO, tailback option, or second exchange type of plays from an under center tight formation. And the third is a team that's just really good at T-sweep. They're going to line up. They're going to come right at you. So, Coach, curious your thoughts on those 3, kind of, how you would rank them in terms of the difficulty in defending them.
Yeah, I think tailback option's the hardest thing to defend because it lends itself to, a busted play every play. And, you know, you have to always declare 2 people to secure a guy like that. because you can't just man them all the time. And so you really have to be multiple in what you do. You have to be multiple in the coverages because, he knows where the ball's going to go in the playbook. So tailback option would be the hardest to defend. Weak sweep gives a lot of problems. And we have found that out over the years. So I would say it's second because, we've just have had to play the best. I mean, we've had to play the best coaches that ever
Hmm.
design it, to live and breathe it and die by it.
Hmm.
And we've gotten schooled, and we've done a lot of work and studying on the weak sweep. We feel like we have an answer to it, but man, we we we've been taught weak sweep's brutal. It's tough when people are
Yeah.
good at it. It's tough. Um,
Yeah. It's the first play that we game plan for when we're playing a Jaybird team. Yeah,
yeah,
depending on who they are.
yeah, it's
But
tough because of the issues that we talked about earlier, and where it can bend to and what it can do, and you can do everything right and still get beat, by it and things. So, we've learned a lot by it for sure. And then T sweep, man, T sweep's great. When you watch the state championship football games, I mean, it's just people sometimes can just line up in T sweep, and it's just good on good, um, and then when you have some blended other plays in with it, and it's just here we come T sweep. T sweep's
mhm.
tough to stop as well. I mean, um, we played Whiteface 2 years ago,
Yeah. Hmm.
and they ran it about as good as anything, along with some other counter plays to marry in with it. But it's tough, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you ranked them in that order because I'm excited to pick your brain a little bit about defending the tailback option stuff because I agree that is the scariest stuff to me when we see it in a game plan. So you mentioned how important it is to you guys to primarily assign two guys to taking the tailback. Are there any other considerations when it comes to defending that play? Anything else that you feel
Oh yeah.
you need to have your ducks in a row?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, number one, the most difficult team to defend in tailback option is a team that has six players that can be a receiver, quarterback included. Okay. So you have to begin with that anyways. And then most people in tailback option, they have a philosophy they have stolen over the time, whether it's going from the three pass to single receiver stuff coming out. Who are their primary receivers? And obviously we would look through to figure out defensively what we're going to do, who they able to throw it to. And that's gonna dictate a lot of the coverage, a lot of the pressures, and where we're gonna come from, and what we're gonna concede and give up. And we'll concede and give up a different guy, you know, on different defensive alignments as well. But um, you got to have a good weak side linebacker. And when we go into what we were talking about earlier, we were working our run fits on our orange barrels. We'll get
Mhm.
into the unbalanced segment of that. So we'll move the quarterback there. We'll do all our run fits doing the exact same thing. So and we still have who's setting the edge, who's setting the edge. And then as we progress it, one of the plays that we let those three guys do when we get to the unbalanced is, okay, well, they can run the quick dive, weak sweep, strong side sweep. Those are the three main plays out of the unbalanced. Then we add a fourth play, and that's tailback option. So he'll go straight into his pitch. We may have our calls in that we want, but now, who's the declared spread rushers? Who's the declared guys that's sending the pressure off of a tailback option look? Same thing in T. If we went balance T, and I told you they can go sweep left, sweep right, and then he can go bootleg if he wants to, right or left. Well, now we're going to go tailback option out of T. And so now you got to see everybody get into their drops and who's responsible for, we call it four hands. So you got to have four hands on the guy, not just two.
Mhm. What about from a rush standpoint? I vaguely remember from the videos I watched of you that you guys will kind of switch up maybe who your rushers are, and this might be a different defense
No,
depending on
no,
like
it's either
who
two,
the other
three.
team
Yeah.
releases.
Yeah, either
Okay,
2, 3. I mean, there's so many different things where you want the rushers to come from. It's just like anything else. You want to have pressure back there. Obviously, the best pass defense is what?
a good
Pass
rush.
rush, right? I mean, that's
Hmm.
common sense. I mean, that's NFL to powder puff. It don't matter. Best pass defense is pass rush. But if somebody gets you in unbalance and runs tailback option, well, most people say, well, my spread rusher is my strong side defensive end. He's if he's that, he's going to come. Well, if he's delayed getting there and you have weak side pressure getting there faster, well, now you have an uneven rush. You
Yeah.
know, you have,
Yeah.
and then when you have uneven rushes, well, now you have lanes. And when you create, and if those lanes are not intentional, meaning we didn't manufacture the lane, like I told you earlier, we dictate where the lanes are going to be. Okay.
Right.
That's the most important in the 2-3. If you don't know where the running lanes are going to be at on a sweep left or sweep right, then that's the first thing you got to start. Same thing with tailback option. You have to know where the pressure is going to come from, and is it going to be even pressure or uneven pressure? Is it going to be delayed pressure or hard pressure up on him? Because soon as the first initial pressure gets there from a guy, well, he's going to make his decision off of that. Well, where's the secondary guy that's supposed to have him? And then who run fits off that? So we'll send what we were talking about earlier, you'll have in a 2-3, you'll have the guy head up on the fullback. Well, we may slide him outside, and then your weak side linebacker then now comes inside. So they exchange response, they change a little. So now he's out, now he's in. But now,
Yes.
let's say our weak side linebacker, like for us, he's a state hurdler. Well, our D end, I told you, he's a 5'4", 220-pound, 230-pound Hispanic kid. Okay. Well, who do you want on a tailback option? Sometimes you want that kid rushing or you want state track meet kid rushing. But that in the 2-3, if you don't work through that, well, the state track meet guy's the cover guy.
Hmm.
He gets tailback option. He's back there covering the receiver. Well, because we may want the D end to now drop and cover the receiver, and the other pressure to come spread rush from there. Same thing in the middle line. Do we want our middle linebacker to send the spread rush pressure and the D end on the strong side to sit and cover dumps, or do we want the D end pressure to come and the middle linebacker to have dumps? So you got to sit there and decide, pressure wise where you want it to come from, but it can never be the same. And that's the thing I think that
Hmm.
gets people, because
Hmm.
when they just say, hey, we're only going to be in a 2-3, we're not going to move the front, we're not going to change responsibilities of who's setting the edge, and we're not going to change responsibilities of who the spread rushers are, that's when they get in a bind. That's when the coaches on the other side got all week to work on where everything's going to be at, and because a 2-3 is not always a cover three. A 2-3 can be a 2-2-2.
Hmm.
A 2-3 can be a lot of different things. Um, and the better job you are at disguising what you're getting, you're probably going to be successful with.
Yeah, this is really fascinating to me right now. You talked about the idea of like having not an unbalanced rush, but the rushers aren't getting there at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will you guys ever do that intentionally, or do you always want the rushers
Oh
sort of
no,
arriving at the
no,
ball?
because you have to know. All right, so a football field, a 6-man football field's divided into thirds, right?
Hmm.
Because you go off the
Hmm.
11-man hashes, so it's divided into thirds, which is 13, 13, 13, right? So you know that, okay, if I'm gonna have pressure come from one side, I'm okay with it being delayed maybe on that side, because I only have to worry about 13 yards. So I actually gain a defender if the delayed pressure comes from that side. So I have a delayed one. But I may want fast pressure to come from the wide side where they got 26 yards out on that side. I need faster pressure to come from there so that number one, he goes back the other way to the delayed pressure and an extra defender. And if the ball comes out on the side that has 26 yards of open space, well, I better make sure I have a short zone guy that's put right behind there, because ball's going to come out fast. And
Hmm.
so, no, we dictate of that a lot, because we want to make sure that an uneven pressure is okay, but we need to make sure who's the person responsible for filling where the uneven pressure is. I don't want a short zone guy behind a zone with a spread rusher that's coming a little slower there. I don't want a short zone guy there, because I already got a short zone guy there. He's slow getting there because he had a mess with a lineman, maybe that was further away from the ball, maybe that blocked him while he was trying to bring pressure. Um, and now I got somebody that's short. So I've got two guys in the same area. So no, we work through those pieces all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really valuable. I'm learning a lot right now. That's really cool. Well, Coach, we like to end the show here. I call this show the 6-Man Spotlight, and it's, an opportunity to give guys like you with your experience and your knowledge to kind of give you an opportunity to share But sort of in the spirit of gratefulness, I'm curious, is there anybody that you want to move the spotlight to? There's somebody you want to give a shout out, in your program, in your life, just, who do you want to kind of move the spotlight to here?
Well, I think I've said this, enough from the mountaintops. And, we got hit with a tornado on May 18th, that completely devastated our entire athletic facilities. And we're still in the process of completely rebuilding it. And my number one thing that I want to do is make sure that the stadium's named after Nelson Campbell. I think when you talk about certain coaches who have left their fingerprints and things into this profession. I mean, he retired as the all-time winningest six-man football coach, and and an impressive feat of the years, and he's won over 80% of his games over a 26-year period. It's to learn and to study and to be under his tutelage and things like that. He's really impacted six man in a big way. The guys that are that are getting into this, they need to learn where the stuff is that they're doing and where it's coming from, and learn who the forefathers were. And I think that's important. Why people say, why do we take history class? Well, you want to take history class for one or two reasons. You want to see where you came from, so that you can make sure you either repeat some of the things that made them successful, and or B, I want to make sure that I don't make the same mistakes that the people did. I mean, that's what history's for. And so the same thing in the six-man football game. The people that have built the foundation and the success that they've done, uh, there's certain people that have just revolutionized the game and left such historical imprints that people to this day are doing these things and don't realize that they've been doing them. And Nelson Campbell is definitely one of those guys.
It's terrific. Well, Coach, once again, man, you're a legend. It's been an honor to have you on, and just I can't tell you enough how thankful I am for, we've never met before, and you just kind of given me a shot to take up an hour of your time, but you're the man, and I really appreciate you.
Nah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, that was pretty cool getting to interview Coach Reed. I was excited to interview Coach Staniland, and I was excited to interview Coach Crawford. Yeah, I'm pretty close in age to Coach Crawford. I've met Coach Staniland a couple times, but when Mike Reed joined the phone call, I mean, I'm really thankful I got to interview a legend like that. Now, a couple takeaways. Number one, interviewing over defensive topics, I'm realizing is trickier than interviewing about offensive topics. There's just a lot to playing defense. It's hard to talk in general terms. With that being said, I found that conversation really informative for the 23 defense because I really did not know that much coming into it. Once again, I'm going to link in the description the videos I referenced when talking to Coach that he posted on Six Man Football. Those are definitely a deeper dive, but it was nice to sort of hear Coach actually discuss them, here in more recent times. Because, if you're a more seasoned coach, that conversation with Coach Reed probably didn't blow your mind when it comes to the 23 defense. But just hearing how they organize it and how they teach it from the ground up every year, I think that's really valuable for anybody. Now, to me, the highlight of the conversation came towards the end of the call when we started to talk about their practice structure. And man, I really enjoyed his thoughts on defending TBOs, tailback options. For me personally, that was the most detailed information I've ever seen when it comes to thinking about rushing the passer versus under-center TBOs. He brought up that idea of even versus uneven pressure, and that's something that I'm going to be adding to my toolbox whenever we have to defend that kind of stuff, right? That's something that probably should have been crossing my mind, but better late than never, I guess. Now, I like to share with you guys some things that I wish that I could do over again, like if I could do that interview again. And I think the biggest thing is I learned a really valuable lesson at the end of this interview, and that is to not stop recording. After the interview wrapped up, I kept picking Coach's brain about how they actually run their TBOs on offense, and I wish I would have just never hit, right? I mean, he sticked around for almost an hour after we hung up the recording session and was just really open, and it was a really cool and interesting conversation. I wish I would have got it on video, but I don't know. If I'm ever lucky enough to get Coach Reed back on the show, that's 100% a conversation that I want to get on video if he's ever willing to come back onto this mess of a show. And that does bring me to my final thought from this conversation. Coach Reed just seems like a great guy. I'd seen Coach Reed give a clinic talk at the inaugural Six Clinic, and I remember walking away from that clinic feeling that I didn't necessarily have like any big scheme takeaways, but it was really fun just to listen to Coach. And he seemed like a person that I would love it if my kids played for him. And following up with that clinic talk with this opportunity to get to interview Coach and him sticking around for an hour after, we had stopped the recorded interview just to share the game, I walk away from this conversation a huge fan of Coach Reed and of Gordon. My gut says that Coach is probably never going to watch this video, and if he does, there's no chance he makes it this far. But I just want to throw out there again how thankful I am for him being willing to share the game so generously. And if you're interested, stick around here after the credits of the video for a fun moment from the beginning of our interview that still cracks me up today when I think about it. And to everyone that's still listening, I appreciate your support. I hope that you'll subscribe if you haven't yet, and I hope that you'll press the like button if you're enjoying the Six Man Spotlight. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.
I'm excited.
Yeah, just to get right into it.
Yeah,
As when I'm listening to a thing, I just skip that stuff a lot of the time. I don't know if that's the ADD generation.
Hey, I got my. Think you're the only one. Yeah. I've been
this is
doing
gonna be
a long
fun.
time.